everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. That was very
That's what we do.
I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
I'm all over the place right now. The weekend's just starting. I can't speak, and we're just going to power right through this. Luckily, we're just doing the Roundup today for January 2023.
Yep.
So a little less formal of an episode. So I think I can handle this because clearly.
Yeah. We're playing fast and loose out here.
Exactly. So it's your first time joining us for one of the Roundups. At the end of every month, we like to go over some of the movies that we watched that we didn't review. Old stuff. It's a new one that we got to that maybe nobody else did. We didn't get to a review of it. We talk about those here. And we split them up into 4 categories to give this some semblance of a structure. And Dylan, would you like to tell the people what the categories are?
Yes, those categories are Best New Watch, Best Rewatch, Dud of the Month, and movies we just want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think we can dive right in with Best New Watch. I can go first. I have 3 that I would like to talk about for this month.
All right, go for it.
And the first one I want to talk about is a movie called Meek's Cutoff.
Yes.
Which is a Western from director Kelly Reichardt, who also directed First Cow and Old Joy. Those are 2 movies we've talked about on this podcast before. Yeah, it's from 2010. 1840s. It's a group of 3 families and their guide who are journeying to the West Coast along the Oregon Trail. They break off from the trail. It's a little unclear why. Maybe a shortcut. Maybe they just didn't like going with that many people, whatever.
Okay.
They veer off from the trail and they kind of get lost. And that's basically the whole movie is them trying to find their way back on track, and they're running low on water.
Interesting. Okay.
So, and if you've seen any of Kelly Reichardt's movies, you know that she holds back a lot. She's very patient. She really lets her characters just kind of do the heavy lifting, and she lets you sit with them through seemingly mundane moments. And what I really love about this is that when the movie starts, they're already lost.
Oh, okay.
So you don't see the whole caravan or whatever of people that they were with. You just hear about them after they're just by themselves. And it's got a really good cast. It's got Michelle Williams, Bruce Greenwood, Will Patton, Zoe Kazan, Paul Dano.
Damn.
Yeah, so I was kind of inspired to watch this after I got a bit of a Western kick from the multiple times I watched McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And the movie that most reminds me of, as far as more contemporary movies, is First Cow. And so I saw this out there by Kelly Reichardt, a director I really like. And I like this a lot. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It could go up, as I feel like Reichardt's movies always do in my head. After they're over, I kind of realize, like, okay, that was good. But then I think about it more, and I think, like, God, that really worked, and that really worked. And I like the way that she did this in a way that was a little unexpected. And it's really good. I mean, you and I kind of off camera have discussed potentially doing an episode of Westerns for people who don't like Westerns. And this, if we ever did do that, so slight teaser, this would be on that list.
Yeah.
I like stuff that's more kind of like frontier exploration based. I find that stuff really interesting. I don't like the kind of gunslinger, outlaw, cowboy kind of stuff. That's not really my vibe, but this is really good. I wouldn't recommend this to everybody because it is very slow and it's not much of a plot. It's just they're lost and they're running out of water, and that's how it is for 104 minutes.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So that was really good. Gave that 4 stars. The next one I want to talk about, I went back to watching some really old movies, which I did a lot of last year, especially a lot of in 2021. Haven't done as much of this year, but I got on a little bit of a kick. These next two movies I also gave 4 stars to. And the first one is an Alfred Hitchcock movie, a British movie of his from 1938 called The Lady Vanishes,
Ah, yes. Okay.
which is a train movie, which is always fun.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, train headed for England. There's a young woman who talks to an old lady on the train. They get some tea, go back to their car that they share with some other people. The young woman takes a nap, wakes up, the old lady is gone, and nobody can recall ever seeing her on the train.
Interesting.
So it's a bit of a it's a train mystery basically.
Yeah.
I don't she's trying to find this lady. Is she crazy? What's going on? How come nobody saw her when we all saw her?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other people on the train that maybe believe her, but they never saw her. And then there are some people he mixes it all together really, really well. It's fun. It's really funny. I know it's hard to believe for some people that I could find a movie from 1938 to be like really funny, but honestly, I thought this was funnier than Bullet Train. It's really witty.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue is just fantastic. It's snappy. It's just really, really fun. I mean, everybody's seen The Wizard of Oz and probably Snow White and maybe Gone with the Wind. I feel like those are kind of the three movies from the 30s that your average movie watcher has seen or at least heard of.
Yep.
If you're interested in going way back and watching something and just being surprised at how contemporary it still feels,
Mm-hmm.
there's a gay couple on this train that only cares about getting back to England on time so that they can see a cricket match.
Interesting.
And they do not care that a lady's missing, that she might be dead. God, if this woman stops the train to search for that lady, we'll never make it back in time to see the match. Like that kind of stuff. And they just kind of bitch and they're funny.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed this, but it is a Hitchcock movie, though, so I shouldn't have been that shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
that's
that was
interesting. I haven't seen any of his early or just non like classic Hitchcock stuff. I've only
right,
seen
like
like,
that
The
run he went on in
Birds,
like the late
North by
50s through the early 60s.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So this one, though, if you want to see something older when he was still making movies in the UK, definitely
Mm-hmm.
recommend The Lady Vanishes. And then the last one I wanted to talk about for best new watches is a World War II movie from 1942
Okay.
called To Be or Not to Be, directed by Ernst Lubitsch, which is just a
Ah,
fun name to say,
yeah, yeah.
starring Carol Lombard and Jack Benny. And this is during the Nazi occupation of Poland, an acting troupe becomes embroiled in a Polish soldier's efforts to track down a German spy.
Oh, embroiled, you say?
Yes, yes, we don't hear that word too often, but in this case, it really fits.
Okay.
Uh, it's really funny. It balances comedy and like the seriousness of the situation very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's just got some amazing lines. It starts off very silly and kind of just funny lines here and there, sort of like an old kind of an old movie comedy with just like witty banter, but like really quick, zippy jokes and not a lot of plot. Plot kicks in, it gets a little more serious, and then once the theater troupe kind of becomes involved in what's going on, then it melds the two perfectly.
Mm.
And they do a really good job of never making light of the situation while just still being funny in the way that people are interacting.
Okay.
So this one was my favorite of the bunch. I almost gave this a 4.5. I
Mm.
might
Okay.
if I watch it again. This one, like, highly recommend. I think my parents would really like this. I think you'd really enjoy it. I think a lot of people would like this too. It also fits as kind of an older movie that feels like it's gotten better with age. Because it was made in 1942. So like this was before, I think like right after Pearl Harbor,
Mm.
2 years before D-Day. So
Yeah.
the US isn't really in the war yet at all, especially in Europe. And I just find that fascinating that
Mm-hmm.
people are making movies like this during the war. I mean, I know that they did, and I've seen
Mhm.
some of them before, but when they're done this well, and like a movie that just makes like openly makes fun of Hitler in
Mhm. Mhm.
1942 in Poland, like that's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's really cool. So, and this was also Carol Lombard's last performance. She died in a plane crash before the movie was released.
Oh, dang.
So between that and kind of some comedy elements that I think because it was during the war didn't quite land with people.
Mm,
This movie did not do very well right when it came out.
okay.
But with I don't know, I don't want to do the math. 80 years of
Yeah.
perspective on this now, I think it's great.
Okay. Nice. I'm glad it's not disappear into obscurity.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I have two best new watches. The first one is a brand new film, The Banshees of Inisherin, which I
Nice.
really wish I would have gotten to and been able to do the episode with you and Adam. But yeah, I just pretty much had a great time and just really liked this movie start to finish. For one, it's really funny. The Irish humor, the wit back and forth just got me consistently. The banter, the people at the pub, Barry Keegan, he
Hogan, I think.
Yogan, he was killing me with his what he was doing. I mean, the
Yeah.
line when he's talking about like, "Oh, we got a lot in common. We both think old ladies are creepy," or whatever. Like, it's just like,
Or the one where he's got that like that stick with a hook on it.
mm-hmm.
And he's like, "What do you think this is made for? Hooking things that are this far away?" Like there's something about the way that he says it where like just the idea that that is something that would need to be invented. If somebody was like, "Well, I'm 6 feet away from this thing I really want to hook right now. Let's make a stick and sell it and everybody will buy it."
Yeah, like and yeah, like you said, the delivery, just his delivery, his facial expressions, like the way that he's kind of in the background during the main story, but ends up kind of having I don't know. I mean, he's nominated for best supporting actor, so like he makes his mark on the movie.
Yeah.
Also, Brendan Gleeson, great as always. Can totally see why he was nominated. And then Colin Farrell, just continuing to just be really good when he's cast in the right role, which I feel like he's kind of nailed in the last like handful of years, starting with like his Yorgos stuff, then going to like the Batman. I just think he's picking the right roles right now, and he was just
He
so perfect in this. His facial expressions, just like the internal anguish, but also like the aloofness, and like that he is kind of like a simpleton, but like he still has real feelings. Like like just nails that so well.
he had a
Yeah.
huge year. I mean, he is nominated for best actor for this movie, which I really hope he wins.
Hmm.
But he was also in, like you said, the Batman. He was in 13 Lives, which is on Prime.
Oh yeah.
And he was in After Yang, the second movie by I think Kogonada is the
Mm.
way you pronounce it. The director who did Columbus.
Oh,
That's an
okay.
A24 movie that came out in the spring. It's on Showtime right now, which I also think is good. So he had a
After Yang.
monster 2022.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, he was
And Carrie
delightful.
Condon.
And Harry Condon. And yeah, just the funny parts made me laugh. The serious parts I felt like were very well done. I think it does a good job of balancing. And then yeah, Carrie Condon was fantastic. I mean, the whole cast. It was just the whole thing was working for me. The allegory for the war, the fact that like Inisherin isn't a real place, so this whole thing is kind of just meant to be kind of just a story, kind of out of real time, just
Yep.
existing in the ether. Like I thought it was great. So had a great time with this. Banshees of
Awesome.
Inisherin, freaking awesome. And then my second best new watch is might be a little bit of a surprise, but it is the follow up or the prequel to X, and that is Pearl,
Nice.
the R-rated origin story of the title character there, and who was the old lady
The old lady.
from X.
How the old
Um,
lady got old.
Yep, and yeah, it's just an origin story. Here's the plot, if you haven't heard of it. In 1918, a young woman on the brink of madness pursues stardom in a desperate attempt to escape the drudgery, isolation, and lovelessness of life on her parents' farm. And I think there's just something about this. It's written and directed by T West. Well, written by Mia Goth and T West, directed by T West, starring Mia Goth. And I just feel like they're onto something with their style of horror. Like it's the bright colors, the whole aesthetic, the kind of old Americana aesthetic that's like throughout the whole movie. The green grass is so green, the red barn is so red, her dress is like pot, like everything is like so colorful and delightful, and it's also this like horrifying, like slow descent into madness story. Mia Goth just totally kills it. And I will say, like, the plot is a little thin, but it makes up for it, in my opinion, because Mia Goth's performance is great, and it has a lot of individual horror moments that I felt like stuck with me, and I felt like elevated it just from a 3.5 to a 4. Like in particular, the her dad, who is in a wheelchair, he's like a paraplegic or something, and he can only express himself through his eyes. Like not even really, like that's all that, and like they got so much mileage out of that. Like I loved like the second half of the movie. That was crazy. The scene later in the movie with her and her friend from town who also auditions, the audition, like all that stuff, I just thought was fantastic. And then the ending credits. I mentioned in my review on Letterboxd that the end credits are my second favorite end credits behind White Noise. Um, just really, just really well done, and I thought it was great. Definitely liked it more than X, and one of my favorite horror movies of the year for sure.
I totally agree. Also, just her monologue at the kitchen table.
Yes, that too. I'm glad
I
you
mean,
reminded me.
I think she gives one of the best performances of the year in this
So do I.
movie. I would not have thought she'd be I don't think she would be out of place at all if she'd gotten an Oscar nomination.
Mm-mm.
These types of movies pretty much never do
Mm-hmm.
anymore. These kind of like elevated horror
Yeah, yeah.
movies, but I thought she was fantastic, and I really enjoyed this as well. And we do have a review for that as well, where Adam and I break that one down.
Mm-hmm. All right, back to you for best rewatch.
Best rewatch for me, there were two.
Mm-hmm.
Really, McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I rewatched it twice this month. We did a whole episode on it,
That's
so
one
we
of
don't need
mine
to
as
get into
well.
it. Yep. So
Yep.
fantastic movie.
Yep. We're renaming the podcast "Speak McCabe and Enter." So
Yep.
that's what this podcast is now.
Um, so then I will get into. I rewatched The Batman, which you just
Ah.
mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not the biggest Batman fan, mostly because I think it's turning into almost like James Bond, where there's this like, who's going to be Batman now? Like, do we
Mm-hmm.
like somebody doesn't always have to be Batman? We don't
Mm-hmm.
need a new Batman movie every 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that great.
Mm-hmm.
However, all that said, I think this is the best. I like this better than any of the Nolan trilogy movies.
It's a hot take. It's a hot take indeed.
So, yeah, I just love how I love the aesthetic of this movie. I like that
Mm-hmm.
it focused more on the noir detective side of Batman,
Mm-hmm.
rather than kind of like the sharp, great looking action sequences that Nolan
Sleek.
has. Like this felt grittier.
Yes. Yes.
This to me feels like it's the closest that any live action movie has ever come to capturing the tone of the 90s animated series. And
Okay.
that
Yep.
for me is just like peak Batman. That's
Mm-hmm.
I watched the shit out of that show as a kid. I love the Mask of the Phantasm movie.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's it. That is what everything Batman should aspire to be. And I think this pretty much nails it. Uh, I
Mm-hmm.
remember watching it the first time. I really liked it. Wasn't sure how I felt about kind of the third act. Rewatch, I think it all clicks and fits together very well. This is a 4-star movie for me, and I think my second or third favorite Batman movie.
Okay.
The first will always be the Adam West Batman movie because there's nothing else like it out there, and that's just amazing. But
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
kind of tied with it might even be ahead of the Mask of the Phantasm for me now.
Okay. Okay. Nice. That's a great choice. Yeah, I think that's going to come up in our top 10 of the year. Maybe, just maybe.
It might. It's kind of like I think I mentioned to you before. I got 8 that I feel really good about, and I've got
Mhm.
about 7 movies that I'm considering for those last 2, with a few movies I still need to see.
Yep. Same
But
here.
it's in the running, which I never thought I'd say.
All right. Over to me for best rewatch. Like you already mentioned, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, fantastic. A lot more of it clicked on the rewatch, so I will just breeze over that. And then my second one was Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith,
Yeah.
because I just forgot how brilliant that last like 45 minutes is, and it was just fantastic and brought a huge smile to my face. And it's just good every once in a while to check back in with kind of that side of movies, kind of the not so serious, extra grand, almost like opera. It's just good for the soul every once in a while.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the score for the prequel trilogy does not get nearly enough attention.
Agreed,
I
for sure.
mean, I think it's I I think it's as good or better than the original trilogy score, and
Another hot take.
it's easily, I think, in my 5 favorite movie scores of all time. It might be number 2. So I have a
Damn.
clear-cut, stamped, never changing number 1, I
Which one is
think.
that?
Once Upon a Time in America.
No, okay. Yeah, that's
I don't
pretty
think
good.
better music has ever been written for a movie,
hmm
but the prequel trilogy, I think that music is fantastic, and it's part of why I think I like the trilogy as a whole a little more than you do, because every time the music plays, I just get, like I'm just like, "Yeah, this works."
Yeah, for sure.
It makes up for a lot of the visual or, anything actually happening on screen,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
acting and the dialogue and the story and everything, just like that amazing music is like, yeah, whatever else is happening, it's fine now because
hmm
listen to this.
hmm And that's kind of how I feel about the wipe cuts too. I know they make some people laugh and they are excessive, but they're also like charming in a way because no other movie would
Yeah,
dare have that many wipe cuts.
have like 1,000 of them.
And they're all different. It's just the whole catalog. It's like he signed some sort of deal where he like had to use every single one.
Well, it's
Like
like,
there's
when you're
ones that go in, there's ones that come out, there's ones that go like
you remember in elementary school when you, like, first learned how to use PowerPoint and you got obsessed with those, like,
yes.
those transitions?
Mhm.
And so you'd spend like 90% of your project just trying to pick the coolest transitions, and the content was just horrible because
Secondary.
you didn't bother to do the research on the owls that you were supposed to do.
Yeah, never.
That's exactly how the first 2 movies of the prequel trilogy feel, which is
Yeah.
like he discovered these wipe cuts, and it was like they're in post in editing, and he's just like in a dark room, like clicking
Just
through the cuts, and every time somebody comes to check on him on his progress, he's just like that's all he's working on.
mhm. Not yeah, not paying really attention to like the structure or other elements of the scene. Like, hey,
Right.
did you edit that one with Padme and Anakin? No, I've been doing the wipe cuts for like the last 3 hours, but I'll get
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So yeah, those are my two rewatches. So over to you for a dud of the month.
Yeah, dud of the month for me is Babylon,
Ooh, nice.
which
Talk to him. God, you're just shooting from the hip today. So many hot
yeah.
takes. I'm gonna step back from the laptop. It's too
Oh
hot.
my god. I mean, I went into it a little nervous because can you please move forward? It's so weird I feel like I'm talking to myself when you're way back there. I'm
Yes.
I think there's a scene in Prisoner of Azkaban where Hagrid asks for a volunteer to ride the hippogriff, and
hmm
everybody steps back. Harry doesn't
Except
move
for
forward.
yeah, but
Everybody
everyone
else just
else steps
backs
back.
up. And then all of a sudden he's just standing out there all by himself and he doesn't know what happened. And
Mhm.
that's kind of how I felt there.
Okay,
Um
so Babylon, it sucks. Tell me
y-
why.
yeah, so I had read a lot of bad reviews. A lot of people seem to hate it. A small but very vocal minority seems to love it. And those are people who think that 10 years from now we're going to look back and Babylon's going to be one of the best movies of 2022. I do not agree with that at all. First half hour, I hated. The last hour, also strong dislike. This movie's over 3 hours long, by the way. So for
Yeah.
most movies, that would be like there was this nice little 15-minute stretch.
Mhm.
But for this, it's got like an hour to like an hour and a half that works. After Margot Robbie's character and the other guy, I can't remember his name, sort of, they meet at a party at the beginning, which is, I think, just horribly done. Diego Calva plays a character named Manny Torres. Margot Robbie plays Nellie Leroy, which is great character naming, by the way.
Mhm.
And they both kind of get their big chance where, like, a girl at the party ODs and somebody's like, we needed her for the scene tomorrow. Who else can get it? And then they just look at the dance floor and Margot Robbie's just killing it.
Mhm.
And they're like, her.
Okay.
And that's how she gets in there. And then the other guy like drives Brad Pitt's character home when he's drunk. And then in the morning he wakes up and he's like, I like you. Come join me on the set today. And that's how they both kind of get in the front door. And everything that happens in that day, you spend like an entire day on a Hollywood set, which at this point is just like the middle of the desert with a bunch of like stages and backgrounds set up.
Mhm.
And there's a shot where you kind of like weave through it and it shows like 20 movies being made at the same time, and it's phenomenal.
Okay.
And then we follow Margot Robbie through this day where we kind of learn that she can like actually act. And we follow the other guy where he like saves the day on a picture that like the camera broke and he needs to go get a new one. There's a great bit where they're filming a movie that's like basically if they made Braveheart like way back then. And
Okay.
like some dude just dies.
Like
Like
really
he gets
dies?
stabbed through the chest with a spear. And they kind of look over him and everybody's like, well, he drank a lot. I think he probably did that to himself. And they
Jeez.
just like agree and walk. Like everything on that day is like A plus 5-star movie making. And this is the same guy
Mhm.
that did Whiplash, First Man, and La La Land. So like Damien
Yeah.
Chazelle can make a movie. Otherwise, there's just a lot of stuff that's just unnecessarily like gross. And they kind of lean into like the debauchery of the time. That's why the beginning of the movie is just, I think, stupid. And then after that whole really good bit, they transfer into like making talkies. That scene's really good. The first time they all have to make a movie with sound. So like there's a good hour to like hour and 15-minute stretch there that is phenomenal. But then the rest of the movie just tries to be Boogie Nights and it's not good at it. And the ending is
Mhm.
stupid and reminds you of better movies that it's emulating.
Interesting.
It's just way too long. I mean, I think overall there's a lot of really good stuff, and I think there's a lot of really horrible stuff.
Okay.
Plus the fact that it's over 3 hours long, which it does not earn at all.
Mhm.
So I mean, I gave it a 2.5 because of how good that sort of middle hour is, but the rest of it just sucks.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I didn't spend 3 hours then to go.
Yeah, if it's on TV, like I would show somebody that hour-ish stretch because it's
All the
great.
stuff that takes place on the movie set,
Yeah,
like
and then immediately
being
after that,
recorded.
there's another like half hour when they start to transfer into talkies, and they got to learn. Everybody's got to learn how to do that, and
Okay.
that's really well done too. So that like hour to an hour and a half is really good,
Okay.
but it's only
Interesting.
half the movie, and the rest of it is garbage.
Okay. All right. My dud of the month is one we already talked about, and that is The Pale Blue Eye. We did that
Yeah,
on our rapid review. Just a lot of good parts, but the sum of the parts is not great. It just doesn't really come together. And yeah, it's also very long. And then my
yeah.
other dud of the month is a movie that I've been meaning to see for a while. Finally got around to it, and that is 2019's 21 Bridges,
I
starring
saw that you
Chadwick
didn't like this,
Boseman.
and I've almost watched it so many times on Netflix because it has bad reviews, but I always thought, like, how is that even possible? It's like a
Yeah.
90-minute action thriller with Chadwick Boseman. Like, how bad could it possibly be? And
Hmm.
you're about to tell us, I guess.
Yeah, so it's just I mean Chadwick is great. And I'd say for the first like half hour, like 45 minutes, like it has the makings of something that could have been great, but then it just gets really predictable. It gets really like thin blue line kind of. It's really
Sure,
it weaves that line between like, being pro cop, but also like part of the plot is there's corrupt cops. And then it's like, okay, so how do you, and then once it identifies these are the good cops, these are the bad cops, then it's like very straightforward from there. It's just,
sure.
I don't know. There were twists that I didn't felt worked. J.K. Simmons is in it, but he's kind of in a weird role. There's this other actress who I have never. Let's see, what was her name? I want to. Oh wow, I never mind. I guess I didn't write. It was Sienna Miller is in this as Frankie Burns, and she was like all right, but then gets pretty predictable. I mean, I don't know. The most interesting thing was like Taylor Kitsch is in this. Haven't seen him in anything for a while. Um, and I don't know, the action scenes were okay, but overall it was just disappointing, and it's a bummer that this is Chadwick's last big movie because
Well,
it's not very good.
I mean, this was 2019, so he had I mean, his last movie, I think, was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom,
Hmm.
and he was nominated for that. So, I don't think this was kind of I mean, Black Panther came out the year before. I think that's definitely and also Endgame came out in 2019,
Okay.
which he's in. Da 5 Bloods came out in 2020.
Oh yeah, and he had just passed, I think.
No, that well, he yeah, that might have been the case because he had 2 movies in 2020. It was Da 5 Bloods and Ma Rainey.
Okay, yep.
So and he
But
did
yeah,
really well in
well,
those movies. So I
it
definitely
was
don't
disappointing.
for sure.
Yeah, plot was not. I don't know, just kind of a recooked version of every other cop
Yeah,
movie you've
got it.
seen. All right, and then last but not least, movies that we just want to talk about.
Yeah, so I had mentioned this to you already, and I'm guessing it's a little surprising this wasn't in my best new watches of the month,
A little
but that
bit.
is, I finally watched Apocalypse Now. I'd never seen it.
Ah,
I had
yes.
started it a few times, and this just makes this kind of the ultimate irony here, but I'd started it a few times and just never felt like I had something else going on. I never felt like I could give it my full attention, and so on a sick day, hopped up on a lot of cold medicine. I threw Apocalypse Now on and somehow decided, like, now is the time
Hmm. Which I
to
think is
watch Apocalypse.
perfect.
Yeah, and I did give it a higher score than I gave it a 4.5, where the other movies I mentioned in my best new watches, I gave 4 stars to, but I don't feel like I'm ready to fully talk about this one yet. I need to watch it again with a clearer head,
Yeah.
because especially once Brando shows up, I was, like, really in and out of it,
Hmm.
and I don't feel like I fully, like, experienced the ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, what I watched and while I was watching it, I thought this is fantastic. This is one of the
Okay.
best made movies I've ever seen,
Yeah.
but because I was sort of in and out of it towards the end, it kinda left me feeling like I didn't fully get all of it,
Okay.
and so that's why I kinda put it here because I wanna watch it again soon,
Hmm. Hmm.
but
I'd be
it's
willing
not
to.
gonna
I'd watch it with you. I haven't seen it recently.
Sure.
Since we started doing this podcast, I haven't watched it. And similar to you, I couldn't even really tell you some of the finer details of like the plot.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's just Heart of Darkness. They're just going down the river, and then there are
yeah.
distractions here and there.
Hmm.
But I will say though, kind of being in and out of it toward the end on cold medicine added to this feeling of like how far removed I felt from when the movie opens and he's in Saigon, like still part of civilization.
Hmm.
It felt like days ago to me. So
Hmm.
I really felt like I was on the river with these guys for like several days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was
Good.
kinda cool in a way because it was just
Immersive.
like I couldn't even remember some of the
Hmm.
stuff that had happened earlier in the movie while I was watching it. So, really, really good, but I need to watch it again with a clear head to sort of digest and, conjure up my
Yeah.
full thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nice. All right. And was that it then?
Yeah.
Okay. I have two just that I wanted to talk about quick. The first one is a little kind of obscure horror movie from 2007 called Wreck.
Oh,
REC,
was
as in
did
like
you watch this last
record.
night?
No, I watched it a little bit ago,
Okay.
a couple weeks, and basically it is a horror movie from Spain, and so 2007. So this is ahead of the Paranormal Activity kind of found footage, overload that we got. But this is like a found footage kind of movie, and it's basically a television reporter and cameraman follow emergency workers into a dark apartment building and are quickly locked inside with something terrifying.
How do I
So
spell this?
REC,
Oh.
just all
Oh, okay,
caps.
I know what this is then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, from 2007. And it was just really fun. I said in my review that like if I had seen this in 2007, I would have been like my favorite movie because it's kind of zombie-ish. It's kind of different with like the camera work and everything. It's
Sure.
short. I think it's pretty well done. I was having a good time the whole time, but the reason I just want to talk about it is like the last like 10 minutes evolve into like another level of scariness that I was not ready for. And I gotta say, it was really well done. Like I feel like the last
Okay.
10 minutes of this movie influenced like Barbarian. Like it's like
That a
real
good thing?
scary. And I was like, damn, like I didn't think it was gonna go that direction. So just the last 10 minutes really elevated this movie, and that's why I felt like I had to talk about it.
Okay.
Um and then last but certainly not least, a movie that we almost reviewed, but I don't think we're going to devote a full episode to now. And that is the horror movie that is out right now, Megan, about the evil robot toy girl.
Yep.
So yeah. In case you haven't heard of it, just a robotics engineer at a toy company builds a lifelike doll that begins to take on a life of its own. So this is getting a lot of pretty rave reviews, but I feel like it's similar to when Barbarian was getting a lot of rave reviews. Feels like it's just kind of the new shiny thing in the horror genre, and people are wanting it to be a classic and innovative, and oh my god, it's so good. But like, it's all right. I mean, plot wise, there are just preposterous leaps. First off, I mean,
It
when
sounds like I would not like this movie.
yeah, no, and if you've seen the trailers and like how the doll like moves and acts and stuff, just know that in the plot, a single robotics engineer built that, and it's presented like she kind of slapped it together like over a few weeks in her garage. That is not like like it's so ridiculous. Like it goes from like her boss tells her like you can't be building these things. I want you to do this, and then she decides later like no, I'm gonna do it anyway, and then it's like 2 minute montage and Megan is completely built and functioning, and it's just like okay.
And, like, selling in stores.
Yeah, like oh yeah, this revolutionary toy, just threw it together by yourself real quick. um but then like I don't know, it's not necessarily, I didn't find it very scary at any points. It's more just kind of creepy and unsettling. And the biggest thing, which is completely outrageous, is that this movie, I went to the cast and the credits, and nowhere is Elizabeth Olsen mentioned.
She's in it?
She is not in it, but I don't know about you. Every single time
Oh,
I look at this doll, I think it looks like Elizabeth Olsen.
really?
Yeah,
Alright,
look at the
hold on.
poster. Look at the
Well,
poster and
I'm
think
bringing it up,
Scarlet Witch.
hold on. Oh, sorry, I forgot to spell Megan with a 3.
Yeah, silly.
Oh, a little bit. I was
The-
what right
like
when you
I
said that,
think
I thought Elizabeth Moss,
no, yeah,
because
no.
she's in so many horror movies, so I thought you were just kinda making a joke about that, but I had the wrong person in my head.
Yeah, but like Scarlet Witch and like I mean and I think like from the trailers originally I was like, "Oh, it must be Elizabeth Olsen must have like given her face or done some of the
Sure.
acting like I thought she was involved." And then I watched the whole movie thinking she was involved. And then afterwards I was shocked to find that no, it's just apparently some crazy coincidence that this doll looks exactly like Elizabeth Olsen.
Okay.
Whatever. It was
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
I
Now that
um
you mention it, like, the shape of her face is very similar, but
yes, yes.
yeah, that's not
And the way
where
she
my mind
talks
went.
and her mannerisms, it's weird. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just okay.
Sure.
Probably wait to see it on streaming if you're debating whether or not to go see it in theaters.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. That is it for the January roundup for 2023. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to mention, Nate, I believe it's your turn to put a wrap on the show.
No, it is my turn to put a wrap on the show, and I will do so as soon as I find the quote that I have prepared for this episode.
Okay, well,
All right, I
your
got it.
plan
I
for the
got
rest
it.
of the year is finally caught up to you.
You don't have to sing and dance or anything to
I'll tap
entertain
dance around
everybody.
while you look for it. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
take
I
it away,
got it.
Nate.
Shapley's the name, and that's the way I like 'em.